It's every Star Wars fan's dream to build their own lightsaber, step onto the famed Millennium Falcon, or simply sip on a blue milk. However, Disney has recently announced price hikes as high as 25%, with more likely on the way. So how can you make your Force dreams a reality? I just went to Galaxy's Edge and compiled a complete list of costs, plus some tips so you don't have to break the bank and drain all your credits. So the trip I'm referencing to Galaxy's Edge was in August 2025. For context, so you can compare what you and your family need, this trip was a 3-day trip and it was just myself and my daughter. So you might need a little bit more, you might need a little bit less, but this is a really good starting point. The other assumption is that you don't live in Florida and you have to fly there. In Orlando, Galaxy's Edge is a part of Disney's Hollywood Studios, so I had to buy a Hollywood ticket. In my case, there was a sale going on, so I bought a 3-day pass, even though I only needed 2 for what I was going to be doing in Disney, and it was still cheaper to do so. And in most cases, you get a discount when it's a child. We found a nice little Airbnb that was actually a part of a hotel. This was about 10 to 15 minutes away from the park. This was the cost for 3 nights. And then my round trip from JetBlue Airlines cost $396.92. Plus, we had to check bags, which cost $80. I know what you're thinking. We're just a few moments into this video and already it's stressful. Joby Wan, please give me some good news, please! Well, it's gotta get a little worse before it gets a little better, am I right? We had a Paisley car rental. Paisley is a subsidiary of JetBlue that cost just over $300 for our 3 days there. And ladies and gentlemen, we made it. We've made it to Florida. We've got the major expenses out of the way. Now, we're going to spend some more money in the most magical place on earth. I'm so sorry. I didn't intend for this video to be so stressful. I just wanted it to be informative. This would have helped me a few years ago. Folks, we are so close. We are almost inside the park where we can spend even more money. Let's start with our airport coffees and then $30 to park at Hollywood Studios. Once inside, all of the following was spread out throughout the course of our day. We were at the park from roughly 9 a.m. till about 5 or 6 p.m. We got beverages and an appetizer at Oga's Cantina, blue milk, and of course, you know I wasn't coming to Florida without getting my Star Wars Coca-Colas. Ugh, I got 2 out of the 3. It's not bad. And then of course we needed some more blue and green milk, lunch at Docking Bay 7, and as any self-appreciating adult would love, a cold brew coffee. Yo, what do you guys think of my mug? I freaking love it. Of course, I had to go back in line because then my daughter told me right after that she wanted blue popcorn, and I fooled you guys earlier. I'm sorry. I was being dishonest. I did, in fact, find the 3rd Coca-Cola Star Wars. I know. Not all at once, thanks. And before we exited the park, I definitely needed a Joffrey's iced coffee, and on the way back to the Airbnb, it was Burger King for a relatively cheap meal on the go. How are we feeling, folks? You still with me? Now let's get into some of the experiences that you can find at Galaxy's Edge, including some souvenirs that you have to bring home. At Droid Depot, you're able to build your own droid. It's remote controlled, it's pretty sweet. And before I forget, most of the experiences I'm about to talk about, I have full in-depth videos on. Go check those out if you want a deeper dive. I bought the Anakin Skywalker Padawan lightsaber, which is his lightsaber from Attack of the Clones. And of course, one lightsaber wasn't enough, so I went to Savi's workshop and built my own, which, funny enough, was also inspired by Anakin's Padawan lightsaber. We brought home Salacious Crumb, which is just a treat all on its own. Oh, and before I forget, there are 6 total Kyber crystals. We bought 5 out of the 6. You know, because Savi's comes with one of them. It makes sense. And then lastly, the only kind of accelerant, I would say, the only experience I think you really have to prepay for when it comes to rides is to get your Lightning Lane for Rise of the Resistance. This ride is completely worth the wait, but in buying this, you'll make sure that you get your spot on the ride. And you just want to make sure that you don't leave Florida without going on it. It's next level, seriously. All right, folks, hold your breath. The total cost of that trip was $2,384.76. But before I share 5 ways that I think you can make your money go much further here, I want to talk about those price hikes. I'm filming this in early October 2025, just a month and a half after my trip, and Disney has announced a bunch of price hikes across the board. Some as high as 25%. Things could change, but what you're looking at now is a little bit different than I was even looking at a few months ago. Here are some of the notable price differences based on things I mentioned in this video so far. For example, my 3-day pass, though it was on sale, wasn't a crazy sale, but it cost me just a little over $284. Now, that's gonna ring you closer to $530. That's a significant amount, especially if there's more than one of you. I'm not gonna mention all the things that I went through, like the beverages and food items, but just assume that there's a little bit of a hike on all those. Really, where this hits the hardest is some of the experiences I mentioned. That droid you built just went from $119.99 to $129.99. Not every legacy lightsaber is affected. However, my Anakin second Padawan lightsaber went from $159.99 up to $199.99. One caveat there is DisneyStore.com often has discounts or 25% off deals, so just keep an eye out for those and wait for the best deal on that. Savi's Workshop was $249.99, and now it is $274.99. And the Kyber crystals, they were $17.99 a piece when I originally bought them, and now they are $24.99. So before I mentioned this trip cost me about $2,384. If I include those price hikes and assume everything else like the Airbnb and airplane stayed the same, the new cost would be $3,143 and change. So how do you get out in front of these? What are some ways that you can either budget for this trip or look for deals throughout the year? I've got you covered. And if there's a tip or trick that I'm missing, tell me in the comments below. I'd love to be able to share them with this audience. Tip number 1, don't buy right away. If you're able to, figure out when you'd like to go. Hopefully that's at least 6 to 12 months in advance. That way you can kind of plan, you can budget, and you can even wait for a deal. Case in point, I knew that I was going to be coming in August of this year, so I started looking for deals in February. I mentioned that my JetBlue airfare was just under $400. For the longest time, it was close to $1,100. So what I did was I downloaded all the major airlines apps and just kept Googling prices as well. And what I found was eventually JetBlue broke through, and that was the day I booked my tickets. And I think that was in May. So I was price watching for a solid few months, knowing what my worst case scenario was, but then eventually pulling the trigger. When you go matters. So if your mind is totally made up on going around the holidays, for example, that's fine. Just know that you're going to pay a premium for it. You can look at Disney's prices per day on their website right now, or even right in the app, and they'll tell you when the most expensive times are. Keep that in mind if you insist on going around those times. Number 3 sounds like it totally contradicts point number 1, but there's a caveat to it. If you're able to, book further out. Here's why that matters. For example, right now it's October 2025, and let's say you planned on going to Disney July of next year. Had you booked this trip a few weeks earlier, your Disney tickets would cost significantly less. Now, we can't control when sales come. We don't know what the market or the economy is going to look like. In most cases, if you can book earlier, you'll be better off by locking in those deals. Just be mindful of what the trade-off is. And tip number 4, write up a game plan. I can't even tell you how valuable this was. I knew exactly the things that I really wanted to see, the experiences I really wanted to be a part of, including building a lightsaber and building a droid, and I penciled in the rest of my experience around those. The other thing I did was I bought the lightning lane for Rise of the Resistance, and when I did, the best available time was at 3:55 on the day I went. I built out a schedule and I knew exactly when and where I wanted to be, with some room for variables, such as weather, or if a ride went long, or if we just needed to go somewhere else for a little bit. And last but not least, this is the most boring one, but the most crucial: budget. Plan a budget. So, like I just mentioned that I made a plan for this, it wasn't just for the sake of time on the schedule. It was so I knew exactly how much money I was going to need, minus the oddball meal or drink or souvenir in between. But a few ways you can do this. You can maximize how far your dollar goes by doing what I did in the first 4 tips of this. But if your cost is fixed, you can budget for it. It may sound daunting to say you have to save up $3,100 for a trip. That's not cheap. What you can do is break that down. Say you're going in 10 months, divide it out by 10. Smaller bite-sized amounts of money add up fast, and they don't sound nearly as daunting when you're trying to save, or maybe it even deters you from spending money on things that you really don't need at this time. And when you have the goal in mind that you need to hit a certain amount, you're much more likely to get there. Despite the cost, I love going to Galaxy's Edge. I'm not without my gripes about the place, but largely I have a ball every time I go. I'd love to hear your tips and tricks for it. If you made it this far and you found value in the video, why don't you hit that subscribe button? And if you also love Galaxy's Edge in the meantime, why don't you go check out that video right there? Here's where the fun begins.